All right, today basically what we're going to be talking about is issues that we're going to have to watch out for as we're moving forward. So the market is changing in different areas. We already know that with inventory increasing and sales in some areas, depending on the price points, are starting to decrease. Now, what the main reason behind this meeting that we have today is things that you have to look out for when you're listing a piece of property. You have to have awareness and also looking out for if there's a divorce case going on. Sometimes you have to ask additional questions. Same way if potential foreclosure or whatever it might be. So we're going to try to point those out today. My recommendation to you, I do create these notes. You do receive them. Just kind of keep them around when you're listing a piece of property and you have a concern about something, then you can we can address those issues. I won't be answering any questions till the end. At the end, if you have any questions, I will open that up for discussion. Now, I'm first going to talk about the marketing change issues, which most of you should have some awareness of that. And price reductions daily are outnumbering the new listings. So what we have to make sure when we're working with our clients that they understand that new listings are coming on much faster than we are being able to put them into pending or closing the escrow. Some of this has to be a time of listing. It has to be a communication. You have to communicate these things to the customer. You never know when you have to start adjusting those pricing downwards. You don't want to be listing a piece of property, the client has no awareness, and then all of a sudden you're asking for price adjustments, especially in a downward spiral. Some listings that I've been monitoring, I monitor 14 counties in Northern California, several counties in the central area where our primarily marketing it takes place, which is Fresno, all the way down to Bakersfield. And some of the things I'm starting to see is we're going to talk about today. And so you're prepared for these adjustments as we move forward. So always look on the daily. In other words, when you look in your MLS service, whether you're in Fresno, Bakersfield, Kings County, or Tulare County, and that's our primary work areas, is that you always look on a 24-hour basis. Look in there and see what's happening every 24 hours. Do it on a daily time sequence. In other words, if you're going to do it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock or whatever, try to stay pretty close to that. Get it into your work format on a daily basis and take a look at new listings, pendings, closed escrows. Those are the three primaries. Price reductions is now, of course, a huge issue. The reason why you want to always be looking at the price reductions, the number one reason is if you have a listing out there, it becomes a competitive issue and then it becomes a problem. So let's make sure that we do that on a daily basis if we're actively engaging in this real estate business. A lot of our agents are doing extremely well and they understand the principles, they understand it, they've been in these markets before, and some have not, but have done very well. So it's not a case where your experience level, it's just about have you done your homework, basically. The interest rates are pretty been stable. They've gone up a little bit and they've come down. But they're kind of hovering around that 6%. I don't anticipate a big change. I mean, I don't project futures, but it could theoretically stay in the 5 range by the end of the year. New construction, we have to have a lot of awareness of that. My recommendation to you as an agent, you should be going through the new construction homes. You should be going out to the subdivisions. You should be talking to the representatives there. Build a relationship with them if you can. Most of them are very nice, easy to work with. But what you're looking for when you go out to the new construction is number one, understand the product that they're selling, find out if they have incentives, find out if they're are paying commissions. Of course, that's the business we're in. You want to know what the commission is and under what circumstances, what percentage they will be paying. Because what I'm seeing now from reviewing the new construction, if it's something that's already completed and ready to go, the commissions will run anywhere from 4% to 2.5%. So I mean, there's more incentive there. Now, if it's something that's under construction, it's going to be probably a lower percentage amount, and unless it's within 30 days of completion, or it is a fall through. So, but understand what the incentives are because it is important. They are going to be your direct competition against your listing. If you have a listing geographically within a mile of one of these subdivisions, it will be increasingly a problem, especially if it's in a similar price point with square footage. So just spend some time in these. Try to go out, maybe every couple weeks, get a group of people together and all you guys get in a, guys and gals get in a car and go out and take a look. That's what I used to do. I do it every week, take a look at it, come back, provide information for the agents. Lower property closing numbers. We are down and all over the areas that I'm monitoring. It's not really a bad number, but it is lower. So the closings we're not getting the closings of course, 2 years ago by any means, but we're still down from last year, and last year wasn't a great time either. So uh, we'll have to rock that out for the rest of the year and see how it develops. But the reason why we're having lower closing numbers is because we have more issues, and I'm going to talk about those as we move through this. Fall through properties, the repairs are the major issue. So my recommendation to you at the time of the listing, address all the repair issues that you can, and let's get them completed and taken care of. It will assist you in selling your property. I mean, I would probably recommend, it depends. I mean, it depends on how you feel about it, but you, the big ones coming up now is people are asking for that termite report and clearance. Uh, you may want to complete one right up front at time of listing so you know what you're dealing with on that side of the area, especially if it's an older home, and try to get that work completed. Anything that's over 10 years old historically could possibly have some issues, but it may not have any at all. The property on the market 7 days and no showings, there's an issue. And you, as an agent, cannot be waiting until somebody brings an offer. What you need to do is you need to talk to the client and talk to them about your marketing program, what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, when the pictures are going to be placed, everything that you're working with. So when you do that, then the client is not going to be surprised when you're sitting down and talking to them. In most cases, you're going to talk to them in anywhere from 10 to 14 days. But what we're seeing is some of these agents that are doing very well in this business, which I've been monitoring agents in the area, and basically what they're doing is they're getting the property on the market day one with good pictures and making comment sections. The comment section is representative of the property. AI is not a problem for you to use it. It should be an indicator and help you do your presentation, but it's easy to look in the comments section and see all the marketing remarks are somewhat similar because that's the way AI works. So what I want you to do is you can go ahead and load it into the into AI, the information on the property, but then go back and edit it to where it's representative of the property you're working with. And when you do that, it will make that comment section unique to itself. You have to do these things if you're going to, you don't want to be living with these listings 60, 90 days because what happens is it takes away from your other, the other things you're doing and trying to generate income as a real estate agent. And that's by getting more listings and or getting sales. So if you're not having any showings at the end of the 7 days, it's a time for you to go back and take another look at how you set your price point, how it was done. Look at the marketing that you have and see how it's set and make sure everything is in place like it should be. Now, yesterday when I was in the MLS, I saw a property that had over 160 pictures of it. It was a million plus property, but that's not realistic. When I looked at it, it had like 5 pictures basically showing the same thing. Try to cut that down, get, 20 to 30 good pictures is probably more representative than, a lot of things. Now, if it's over a million and you think it's got a lot of unique features, then that's fine. But you don't need 160, 170. You don't need that. I don't care how valuable the property is or how great it is. That's just way out of line. Photographers go out and take pictures, and they take a lot of pictures for the client, for the agent, but that doesn't mean that's what you place into the MLS service because customers' attention base is not that strong to be looking at 4 or 5 pictures of basically the same scene. So once you get to the 7 days, you look at all your marketing, you say, okay, this looks pretty good. And then now I need to monitor it for another, possibly a week or sooner if you so desire, for a potential price reduction. Then spend the next 7 days preparing for that. Prepare for what you need to do, how you're going to discuss it. Please do not be calling up a customer and you have no background, no feel, no understanding of your local market area because it might have changed in 7 days. And that will give you a leader on to discuss price change. And when you're discussing price change, you have to put variables in there. You have to say, we probably, based on the information I've done in the past week, it appears that we may have to reduce this price. And if we reduce this price, then we're probably going to make this property more marketable because we've had no showings in the first 7 days or 10 days or whatever that might be. So you have to stage it. You just can't be calling up a customer and saying, we need to reduce the price by $5,000 so I can put it back in the MLS and it'll come up fresh. That's not the way it's going to work in today's market. So work on that. Make sure you have a presentation right and make sure your price reductions. I will tell you about price reductions. Price reductions I'm seeing anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 in the higher price points. And the higher price points in most cases is 650,000 up. And then in the lower price points, I am seeing some price reductions, but please try to stay away from 5,000 or 1,000 or something like that. It's not going to be effective if you're dealing with a $400,000 property going up. You got to get those pricings back in alignment where they need to be. Take out to your customer a couple comps, maybe some recent closings since you listed the property. Take them out there and sit down with them and go over it or do it online, whatever's comfortable for everybody. But just calling up somebody and saying, look, we need to reduce the price, it's just not a smart move because the customer's relying on your expertise. And if you're not providing anything other than saying, I need to reduce the price, it just doesn't, it's historically set well. Divorce cases. The divorce is becoming a problem, and it has to do with changing times. And a divorce was always a problem. It didn't make any difference what kind of market we were in, but you got to be careful with it. You got to be very diplomatic because the parties that are involved are in a dispute. And if you're the listing agent, you've got to retain yourself in a neutral position as much as possible. But the bottom line on it is you have to get an agreement, and you have to get an agreement on the listing price between the parties. The best scenario would be if you could get the parties together and they would sit down and agree to something with you, but in most cases that will not happen. In most cases, you'll probably be working originally with the person that maybe made contact with you, or you made contact with them. So that's where it all starts. But the bottom line on all of it, you need signatures from both parties, because then you have a commitment. If you don't have signatures in both parties, it's going to go from bad to worse. One seller staying in the property and the other seller moved, it's an issue because the person that's in the property is probably not making payments on the house, and it's just going to be a problem. Now, you can't be asking parties to leave, but you have to have awarenesses of it. And the main reason you have to have awareness of it is because if the payments are not being made on the property, and that property was purchased in the last 3 years, it could become very problematic real quick. So that's another thing you need to check on any divorce case. How long have they been in the property? How long they've owned the property, to make sure you have sufficient funds to pay what needs to be done. Verify there's enough equity. And when I'm talking about that, that's to pay the commissions, closing costs, or any other costs that are going to have to be paid. We don't want you working on properties that you can't get your commission from. And that's what happens. And these properties, how do you determine whether you've got enough in it? Let's say the property is 10 years old, but maybe the clients went out and got an additional loan on the property. They have a first and they have a second, and equity loan or something like that, or HELOC. You've got to put those two numbers together and see if there's enough money in this deal to make it close. Because you could be working on something for naught and will not, it just won't generate any commissions, or the commissions will be reduced substantially. All parties sign contracts if divorce papers are not finalized. So what you have to do is, if you reach out to somebody, get in contact with them, and you find out that they have not finalized it, then you're going to have to be working with the attorney. Now, sometimes the attorney has got it pretty good shape to where all we need to know is that it's ready to be finalized, because what we'll do with that, if it's not finalized, we'll need to pull the property and work with the attorney so we can get the closing. Anytime that's not finalized, we want to work with the attorney. So it's a question that you ask. You ask, is the divorce papers finalized? And if they say yes, then get a copy of it, because you're going to need that for the title company. You don't need the whole document involving the divorce, but you do need the documents indicating it's been finalized. So, and then of course, sometimes working with an attorney, it could be frustrating. And the most common problem we run into working with divorce attorneys is getting in contact with them. They're not readily available a lot of times to talk to. So see if you can have a representative within that law firm that you can reach out to so that they can discuss it with the attorney. Usually it's a secretary or somebody of that nature. Repairs, they're not generally going to do the repairs. So how do we solve it? It could be solved at closing, but it's difficult. So it depends on what type of repairs. If a roof needs to be replaced, yes, we may be able to resolve that. But neither party wants to invest any money in the property in most cases, so the repairs are always going to be a problem. Could be an as-is sale, could be cash transactions, not an issue. But other than that, it's going to be you just have to have some awareness of it. So if you go out, see the property, you check. This is like a checklist. You go down through each one of these things and see, are we okay to go and can we move forward? Foreclosures. Now, foreclosures is a reason why we're going to talk about this, and I'm actually going to put together a training program that's in more detail than here. And I'm just going to give you some examples prior to talking about anything specific. In California, 24 months ago, and even up to 12 months ago, there was only about 4 HUD properties that were for sale. Very few. Now, they're generally handled by a local real estate agent in your market area, no matter where you're at, Fresno, Bakersfield, wherever it's at. There's a local person taking care of it. I've been monitoring that, and it's starting to rather rapidly increase. I mean, 3 months ago there was like only 13. There is 74 currently on the market in HUD Home Store. So we're going to have to start taking a look at that as real estate agents. Even though they're locally handled, the contracts are different. They have a totally different format on how they work, and you have to work with that listing agent. And my recommendation now is to go to training. They're required to do training generally at least monthly or bi-monthly, depending on the area, and attend that training. In the past, I would have not recommended it. I would say, hey, it's just not enough of it. But there's 74 in California right now. Lemoore has one. Porterville has one. I did not see any in Fresno. Bakersfield has 4. Now, Bakersfield's starting to interest me because it had 4 HUD properties that were on the market. Under Home Path, which those are Fannie Mae properties, Bakersfield had, of the 77 in California, Bakersfield had 4. I didn't see any in the other, or I didn't actually look, and I didn't see anything on the map showing any others geographically in that area, or Visalia, Tulare, or Fresno. Fresno had one that was not Fresno proper. It was north of that. Home Path, they process short sales, and I provided, I'll talk to you about it. It's on their website, and we'll discuss that a little bit. But basically, you can go to HomePass website, and if you're doing a short sale, when I get to short sales here in a couple of minutes, we'll discuss it. Equity in the property on a foreclosure, you got to be careful. If the property has a notice of default filed, first place I want you to look, because this notice defaults are starting to come to the surface more rapidly than we've seen in the last few years. Make sure there's equity in the property, number one. Then the next thing I want you to do is I need you to verify the payoff with the lender. If there's enough equity in the property, then it's going to turn out to be a traditional sale. So a lot of people thinks a notice default is the end of it. And some sellers think that. They don't realize they have equity in the property. So you're going to have to do your homework when you're listing these properties to take a look. So most of them are going to have equity. if the property was purchased in the last 24 months, probably if it's a FHA, VA, low down program, then that's going to be different. That's probably end up going to foreclosure. The timeline on a foreclosure, you have to know the foreclosure sale date. If it's 45 days or less, it's probably going to require a time extension. For you to list a piece of property and try to get it sold, you would have, if it's 30 days, it's going to become very difficult to get it closed out. And some lenders will provide time extensions, others won't, depending on the circumstances. So you got to do your homework. You got to find out, okay, can I make this work? If you can't, don't take something on as 15 days from foreclosure. It's just probably not going to happen unless you check with the lender and they've automatically done an extension for whatever reason. Liens on the property. I need you to check, see if there's any liens on the property other than the first loan. They could be different type of liens that may not be an issue, but they could be, so you have to be careful with it. We're starting to run into liens involving student loans and different things that we historically have not ran into. And so check with the title company, ask them to run a preliminary title report on the property. If they're not willing to do it, get another title company. It should not be a problem. My recommendation, if you're having a little bit of a problem with the title company on trying to get a preliminary title report, I would go ahead and notify the title company that you're going to put it in your notes that you have a pre-opened title, you have a pre-opened escrow with a specific title company and a specific person. There's no reason why you cannot do this, and I was strongly starting to recommend doing it. Then at that point, you can generally get a preliminary title report. In the Northern California area, that's a given. It's already in every time you open up a listing, it already has it in there. So if you're comfortable with a specific title officer and a title company, then put it in there. There's nothing that says you can't. But the important part is number one, get a copy of the preliminary title report. You should be doing it on every listing in today's world. You need to know what they're, and then understand how to read it. Understand what you're looking at. Just getting it is one thing. If you don't understand it, you can reach out to your managers in any one of the offices. They'll be more than happy to explain it to you. And if nobody's available, feel free to give me a call. I'll be more than happy to look at it if you forward it to me. Short sales. Now, short sales is basically not enough equity in the property. But sometimes people are not making payments. They've had the property for several years. They don't need to do a short sale. It's going to be a traditional closing because we have enough equity in to close it. Now, if it doesn't have enough equity to pay the closing costs and the commissions, and that's generally in most cases on a short sale, that's about all a lender is going to pay. They're not historically going to be paying personal notes and things like or anything else, property taxes they will pay, but that's pretty much the extent of it. Homeowners policy, just to the day of closing, they'll take care of that. Now, be careful when you're working in the short sale arena. You got to contact the lender for short sale guidelines. Now, some of them are on websites, and HUDs, there's a total process, and I put it with today with these notes. I did a presentation on it a few months ago, but follow those guidelines. It's pretty detailed the way I laid it out, and you generally would not get in any kind of problems when you use that guideline. If you know that you're having to deal with a short sale involving FHA loans, and you will be if that property was purchased in the last 2 years, could be in the last 3 years, depending on circumstances, because they're very low down payments. And what causes it? Sometimes it's a divorce. People just not making payments, people just walking away. So there's a lot of different issues that generate around that. So stay on that guideline for FHA. You have to do what they call a pre-foreclosure. You have to go through the process, and it indicates it takes 4 to 6 months to make that program work. And what they will do is they'll place that foreclosure on hold if there's a foreclosure starting to take place for 120 days. And I'll talk about, and it's self-explanatory. Any questions, any help, or whatever you might need in any of these areas, feel free to reach out to me. Seller to provide authorization. The seller has to provide authorization on any short sales. And there's a form, all of them. In today's world, most lenders have these programs in place already. And originally through the 08, 09, 010 problem, nobody had anything in place, so it was very problematic. It's not that it's not problematic, but it flows better than what it did originally if everybody does their homework. The pricing property on the market, it's always subject to the short sale approval by lender. Now, how do we do that? If it's a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac product, sometimes they have guidelines, and FHA's got a specific guideline, so it doesn't change. But just writing up a listing and saying, oh, it's subject to short sale approval, and nobody has talked to the lender, nobody's talked to anybody, it's not going to go well. So the listing contract is 6 months to allow time to process a short sale. Okay, now I'm talking to you from a standpoint of a listing agent, but if you're the buyer's agent, all of these same questions have to be asked. If you're the buyer's agent, you're working with a seller and a seller's agent, make sure they're on track of what they need to be done, what needs to be done to make the deal work, because most of them don't understand it. I will tell you, we have not had to deal with this in most cases in recent years. So people have either forgotten if they've been around the business for a while, or they've never been around the business during these type of market adjustments, and this market is adjusting. But it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you as an agent to increase your revenue stream, but you have to understand what the different processes are. Bankruptcies. Ensure there's equity in the property to pay the closing cost. On a bankruptcy, you're generally going to work with a bankruptcy attorney. And what you want to know is if that bankruptcy hasn't been finalized, can it be released from the bankruptcy process? And that has to be discussed with the bankruptcy attorney. Sometimes clients try to sell our property and it don't go well. And so we have to, then in this situation, we have to work with the bankruptcy attorney because there could be some issues going on. Sometimes they prolong the sale. You want to know when it can be released. That is the basic question, because some of those can go on for a couple years and the property's tied up during that point and the property's not going anywhere. The loan balances are going up. Everything is just getting ugly. So make sure it's really straightforward with the attorney and make contact with them. They will work with you, and there's a reason why. It's called revenue. That's how they get paid. So they're going to work with you on it. So it's not a problem where they won't. IRS tax liens on property. These have to be addressed. An IRS tax lien is an interesting scenario. It can be on the property and we can still manage it, close the escrow, do whatever we need to do, but we have to understand the process. Contacting IRS involving a lien is not easy. The property owner has to do it. They don't want to be bothered with it. And so if they're making their payments and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, even if there is a lien on it, then it's probably workable. And if not, in some cases, it's a partial payout has to be addressed, or in the worst scenarios is we have to pay it off through escrow. So that's when it becomes an issue. So you have to look if the property is 10 years old, and of course it's probably doubled in value, we can probably pay the IRS tax lien off and deal with everything. Because everything that I'm talking to you about today involves equity. If there is no equity, then we have to find another way to approach it and sell the property. So we're always looking for equity. Every time, all of these issues I'm talking to you about is the equity there? If the equity is not there, then our commissions are not there. So that's where we have to start looking. Solar systems. Now I have a copy of a solar contract. You have to get a copy if you're the buyer's agent or the seller's agent. My recommendation to you is get a copy of the contract if you have the buyer's agent. Maybe, the clients went through the property and saying, look, I'm interested in buying it. Contact the listing agent, get a copy of the contract. If the contract, what I'm seeing now, and I've been looking at a lot of them, and most of these companies, basically, same principle, unless they're a major like, you know, Sunrun. I mean, some of those, they're different. But anytime you see a solar contract, it's got some, not a major name. And Sunrun, and that's probably the only one I would tell you it's got a major name that it's probably not going to be that difficult to work with. But all of these other companies, most of them went bankrupt within 36 months. Why did that happen? Well, what they did is they went out, these these contracts are overinflated substantially. And of course, it's the nothing down story, or first 15, 16, 18 months, they do a teaser loan and that type of program, and then they increase it. Well, these companies, what they do is they go out, they get a contract signed. And it was real interesting. I was talking to a gentleman when I got me a new phone here a few weeks ago. He used to sell solar contracts. And it was rather interesting to listen to him. He they have what they have a closer, and and then they have the salesperson walking the street. The salesperson walks the streets, then he finds a prospect. Then the closer comes in and does hard sale, and then kind of reminds me of used cars. And then basically the contract signed, and that's the way it goes. Then these same companies within 36 months go bankrupt. Reason for it is they don't want to deal with the repair issues or warranties or anything related to it, or they were just oversold and they just took the money and ran because they took those contracts and sold them to a third party. I'm not saying solar is not good. It's just make sure you have to understand what you're dealing with. So when you're an agent, we don't make recommendations on this is good, this is bad, or not, whatever. If you don't understand it, forward a copy to me. I'll review it for you, and then I will get back in contact with you. But in most cases, it's really about the buyer contacting the solar company that currently has a contract. Now, the seller is making a payment. The seller is making a payment to somebody, and that's where we start to try to find out how to transfer it and what we need to do. In most of these contracts, it's 30 days. In other words, the solar company has 30 to 45 days to do what they need to do to transfer it if it is transferable. The type of solar agreements are owner, leased, and power agreements. Now, most that you're going to see today in today's real estate market are power agreements. The main reason behind that is that it still has some marketing potential about it because basically the customer's just buying power from the power company, and so it's a different scenario. Usually has 2 or 3% escalation clauses in it on an annual basis, and of course after 5 years, unless the regular utility company like PG&E or Southern California Edison Company, if they haven't increased in that proportionate amount, you might find that particular loan upside down. Most of them are 20 to 25 years. As we all know, the most solar systems at the end of the 10-year mark are historically going to start to have issues, but that's not for us to discuss or anything else. They just contact the solar company. The most important thing that I need you to do to remind the buyer is the warranty still in play when the property is transferred? And in most cases, it's not, but it would have to be something you would have to reach out to. And that's the big one. Most agents always ask me, well, what's the most common problem? Well, first off, let's find out if the warranty is transferable. If the warranty is not transferable and it's a 3-year-old, then they have to understand if that solar is not working properly, then there's going to be an outside source having to deal with it. Seller's not reducing the sales price. Well, it's probably not going to change for a while, but it is changing. And the CMA comparable properties agents to review weekly. So if you're a listing agent, what I need you to do is set yourself a schedule. And part of your schedule is every week you review your listing. And I know most people sometimes don't want to deal with it. Maybe you have too much business. I don't care how much business you have, you need to review it weekly. You need to reach out to your client weekly. If you do that, then it's going to be easier for you to lower the price if it's needed, or if repairs are needed to take place, or whatever it might be. If you list a piece of property and do not reach out to your client on a weekly basis, it's going to be problematic. When I was listing properties, the way I did it is I did it off emails. Every week I sent out an email stating who went through the property, any comments that was made, and it's real easy to do. You show on a piece of property, call up the agent, spend a few minutes with him talking on the phone, make some cursory comments, and then when you talk to your client, you have something to discuss with them. Otherwise, calling the client up and saying, hey, by the way, property hasn't sold. I need a price reduction. As far as I'm concerned, it's not the way to do it. So review it weekly. Competing properties in the area of the listing. You've got to watch that, because if they're reducing their price and you're not monitoring your listing, you're going to find yourself in a problem, because if they have a better property than you, they're simply going to do what we all used to do especially when I sold real estate. I just used that property to bump off of. So I'd show it and I'd go over and show her that lower price property. And that's the way I worked it. Extended time on the market, and the seller is not reducing the price. What do? Excuse me. You have to do something. So what do? Well, you have to make a decision. Seller not reducing the property. I'm 60, 70, 80 days into the escrow. I mean, not escrow, I wish I was, but I was into the listing and that property is not moving. It's not getting shows. Or I got some offers and the seller would not budge. They're going to hold their price, do whatever they're going to do. Then you have to make a decision as an agent whether you want to move forward with this client. And then you have to work with the client and indicate to them, we need to reduce the price. So there's different methods of dealing with that. But as we move forward in this market, when we're getting to 60 and 90 days, and sometimes we're going to find ourselves in 4 or 5 months, then it becomes a problem for you as an agent because I'm asking you every week to review that listing to see what's going on. Why am I doing that? I'm doing that because if you review it every week, you'll come to the conclusion that maybe this thing won't sell, or maybe I need to do something to make it sell because how do you do that? And that's generally price. It's always built around price. So it's getting the price right, finding out what the motivation of the seller is. There is no motivation and they're not reducing price, then it's probably not a listing we should have took if we had it. But unfortunately, we all take listings that don't really go anywhere in our careers. Conditions of the property. Good properties are selling. I'm looking at properties every day. I go into these MLS services and the properties, it's got condition, location, and price, they're selling. There's no issues. The properties that are not selling, they have issues. And I'll be honest with you. I think in most cases, it could be agent driven by not sitting down and discussing with the seller. Because if the seller does not want to hear it, they're going to want to cancel the listing. And if they want to cancel the listing and you're ready to cancel, then that's probably going to work out to be good for everybody. The repairs need to be taken care of. It's becoming too big an issue because we have new construction in the areas in these communities and they don't have repair issues. And their price points are starting to move in the direction, well, already has, in the directions of the existing market. And that's your most direct competition. Your most direct competition is new construction. And you'll always see that. The seller pricing their property, they're using the internet information. Just be my recommendation to you, if you're going out on a listing, take a look and see what it is. Uh, you need to, customers nowadays are much more informed than what they used to be. So, I mean, we used to be able to go out to the property and sit down with them and say, here's the information because we were privy to it. In today's world, we're not. It's all over the market. So hit a website you're comfortable with and just see how it comes up. Might hit two or three, see what they're showing. That does not mean that's what the price of that property is, but it does mean that maybe your customers looked at it and you'll have to address it. So discussing that type of, because if the customer comes to you and say, well, I was on the internet, well, you have to understand that's a different type of format on how they determine pricing. The way I determine pricing is I'm looking at the condition of the property, the location of it, and I'm also looking at the price. That particular system doesn't take into consideration location and condition in most cases. Residential property contracts, not providing time to resolve issues during escrow. This one is getting to be a big one. Most of the calls I get from clients, well, it didn't close. And what do I do? The agent on the other side didn't do this or didn't do that. Well, how long is the escrow we have? 30 days. Oh, well, what's going on? Well, we got a loan problem or whatever it might be. 45 days, you should be able to solve everything. 30 days, in most cases, you can if it's a clean property and it's a clean escrow. But you got to be careful with it. And when I say a clean property, I mean there's no liens on the property. We're just talking about, hey, we got equity in this thing. We can close her out in 30 days. Property's vacant. You don't have to deal with anything, and we're all being able to move on. Be aware of closing date and customer moving dates. This is becoming a little bit more of a problem. And you got the area you need to be careful with is if the seller is going into new construction. That's where I've been running into my biggest problems working with the agent. They haven't got the property completed, finalized. It's got to have a final, and then of course nobody can move, and then it creates a problem there. Pre-qualifying letter is on the property. Make sure they're updated at current interest rates because current interest rates change all the time, right? And, it's not, it could be 6% and could be 6.25. It can move all over the place. So make sure the lender is providing you an updated one. So always, it's easy for them to do it. They can do a quick refresh on it and bring that thing up and then get it current so that you don't have any problems. Everything we're talking about today, remember, these are all preventative things to get to the closing date. Buyers not locking interest rate is a problem. Rate not locked at a time of acceptance of the offer could be potentially problematic. Now, I don't necessarily say you have to have it locked, but you have to understand the client's process, how they're looking at it. So check with the lender. Check with the lender and see if the loan is locked. Then, when you check with the lender and they say it's not locked, see if you can get some feedback on why it's not locked. It could be a case where the person is marginal qualifying and it needs to be locked, or it could be some other reason, a client issue, or whatever it might be. But this is where you talk with the lender. This is where you start building a relationship with the lender that you're working with. If they're not willing to provide you any information, then it's probably not going to work. Try to stay local. I know sometimes you can't, but trying to work with internet, Southern California mortgage companies, and they're problematic. They work by a different beat, and they're the local lenders you have a relationship with. And that's the bottom line. So if you don't have a relationship with a local lender, then get one and work with who you're comfortable. The company has, we have people coming in that does it in all these offices. And if you feel comfortable with them, then use them. The contingency sales are a problem. It don't make any difference if it's conditional on the seller finding a replacement property or conditional on the buyer finding a property. These are not historically closing. Now, the contingency sale, if the buyer has not sold his property and you're working on it and you have the buyer, that property has to be competitively priced. It has to be right on. If it's not, it's going to get ugly. And so if a client is saying they've got to sell their property, then just make sure you understand you got a property that will sell. And you got a property that's going to sell within 15, 30 days at the max 30. And then also make sure you understand the form. There's variables within the form. If you don't understand it, you reach out to one of your managers or feel free to contact me and I will discuss it with you because there's different variables on that contingency removal issue involving the buyer's property. Check and see if the buyer can actually close on the property without that property selling. It's a general question you ask. Okay, well, on condition of my house selling. If we don't get your property sold, Mr. Buyer, is there other resources that we have available so we could close this other one? These are the questions you're going to have to start asking. Properties with multiple homes, properties not selling. In other words, it's a contingency sale. If there's more than one property in the sale, it's not going to work. And we, during the hot market, we had like 4 or 5 in contingency. So when you get multiple homes in there, you got to make sure that it's reviewed. So if it's just the buyer's property having to be sold, okay, well, let's check on the buyer's property. He says he's in escrow. Okay, well, that's great. Now I need to find out that particular buyer of the buyer's property, he's not conditioned on something selling. And if he is, and it's not hasn't sold, then we need to know what's going on there. In other words, we have to start doing our homework because properties are not moving as rapidly as we want them to. So it's creating a fall through issue, and they're also time consuming, very time consuming. So go on to the next page just for a couple of minutes, please. Where there is no next page. So basically what yeah, go ahead and move it, please, to the next page. All right. Now I've attached this with the paperwork we sent out. Michael's attached it also. What you have to do is follow the guidelines. I put this together and it's got all the basic information. In other words, you actually went in and did the understanding the short sale. You'll find there's several pages tied to it, and it gets a little complex and it's hard to understand. So if you follow these basic guidelines, you're going to be fine. I'm not going to go through and discuss them today. We did it on another training session, but follow these guidelines on an FHA short sale pre-foreclosure process. And then you're going to be in pretty good shape and you won't get stuck. Now you got to be careful when you're working, you have a buyer and the agent on the site says, yeah, we put it in short sale. Well, it hadn't been approved, then it's going to be a problem. So everybody, you need to take some time. And here's another thing that I want to discuss with everybody. This market is not bad. I made my most money. I sold for 17 years and I went through all kinds of different markets. And the bottom line on it is the market is not bad. It's what we have to do. We have to change what we done in 2 years ago or a year ago because it was easier to close on a property. Today, you have to do your homework when you're out there working in the market, and you guys will have great success and you'll have a great rest of this year. So I appreciate everybody coming on today and thank you. And if there's any questions, I'll feel free to answer those. Just put them in the chat. All right, we have nothing in there. And thanks for the comments. And you everybody have a great day, and we will see you next month. Thank you.
So if you get the audio book, the preface is read by Mike Allen.